Hey guys, today we're going to be jumping into a top 10 best units in Dragon Ball Legends video. This is going to be the May 2024 edition, and as per usual, everything's going to be judged at 14 stars, best teams, best equips, max title boosts, god rank, fighting the best players, best strategies, everything at the absolute pinnacle. And then the next thing just to mention real quick is that just because a character is ranked lower or higher on this list than other characters, doesn't mean they're objectively better than those other characters or worse than those other characters. It just means that in the current meta environment, they are better or worse right now as I see it. But things can quickly change. Obviously, we're about to head into the anniversary, which is going to have a big impact on this list. I think that's also probably something that I should mention here as well, is I expect this list to be completely irrelevant in about 3 weeks. So, I guess this is going to be a short, pre-6th anniversary meta here, where this is where I think the list is going to be. But as soon as the anniversary begins and we start power creeping the entire game, things will change very rapidly. And then lastly, just this is my own opinion. Obviously, I've, formulated these rankings based off of my own experiences using and fighting against these characters. So let's go ahead and jump into the list. Let's try and not make this just take forever here. All right, coming in at number 10, we have Beast Gohan. I think it's probably safe to say he's just holding on to the top 10 spot here. I mean, there are other characters you probably could have put in number 10, but I think Beast still deserves to be on this list. Although he's definitely, when we get to the next list, I would be very surprised if he was still on here. And the main reason why he's not aging poorly, but he's not really aging greatly, just because this is a very selfish character. This is a character that basically wants you to build a team around him, and he's going to be doing all the damage. Doesn't necessarily tank the greatest. And I think one of the reasons why I even have him on the list at all still is just because of the fact that he does actually provide some additional support to the team in the form of blast damage, but that's really all he does for the team. Besides that, he's kind of just your generic beat stick damage dealer, doesn't really tank well, doesn't heal, doesn't provide anything of substance besides just a raw damage buff. Obviously, when he transforms into Beast Gohan, he's pretty strong. I think he's still relatively tanky as Beast, but it's, this guy came out over 5 months now ago at this point. So I think we're sort of reaching the point where we're starting to see him sort of become not nearly as relevant anymore. And again, once we hit the anniversary mark of the 6th anniversary, when part 1 starts, I probably will imagine this guy would fall off the list completely. Again, doesn't mean he's bad, doesn't mean he's unusable, doesn't mean you can't dominate the game with him still, but it's just, I don't think he's as valuable in this meta as he was in the prior list, and as we move forward into the game here. But still a good character. I don't really think there's much else that needs to be said. You guys know how this character works at this point. So Beast Gohan number 10. Let's move on to number 9. All right, number 9 is going to be Goku and Bardock. I definitely have seen a lot of people talk pretty negatively about this character recently, and I understand why. I would probably agree with the sentiment that this is probably not a fantastic meta for them. It's a pretty anti-strike meta right now. There are very few characters that are strike-oriented that can still perform very well in this meta, just because there's a lot of strike cover change characters, there's a lot of characters that have gauges that specifically are basically immune to being hit by strike cards. But I think this character does have some tools. Like, for example, if we're directly comparing this guy to like Beast Gohan, who I had at number 10, I think this character has some of those extra tools to allow them to stay in the mix a little bit more effectively than Beast does. For example, AoE Green, very, very powerful tool. They have the Indestructible, which is really nice defensively, things that just Beast doesn't have access to. So I would put them a little bit above Beast on here, but I'm not going to go super crazy and have them like number 6 or number 5. Like, I think probably they're around this number 9, 8, 10 area, somewhere in there. I think they're still able to perform pretty well. Again, they're not a character that you can't completely dominate the game with. But again, it's going to be harder to do that with this character than it would be for the characters higher on this list. Most of the time, you're going to have cover null with this character, but I would actually make the argument, and I've stated this multiple times now, that I think as we continue to get these characters that have these counter gauges or combo stop gauges, it's going to devalue the effectiveness of cover nullification moving forward, because characters can stop combos even if the opponent has cover nullification active with their gauges. So we'll see if they continue down that path moving forward, but this character, one of their biggest strengths is the ease at which they obtain cover nullification. So if they can't really capitalize as much off of that, then it's going to be a bit harder to use them. But again, they can still bring a lot to the table in AoE green card priority gain with that. Indestructible. They have pretty decent blue card damage as well. They have the synergy with a lot of the other Saiyan and Sun family characters. So again, I'm not going to completely rule this character out yet, but again, they're on the same trajectory as Beast, pretty much, where they were dominant during Legends Fest, which was now 4 or 5 months ago, and now we're starting to move on from there. So I'll have Goku and Bardock here at number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is going to be GT Spirit Bomb Goku. I think this is one of those characters that's pretty easy to judge. Again, a lot of people watch it. So this is not really a point I make too often when I make these videos, because I mentioned this in the beginning, but I'll reiterate this because a lot of people don't seem to understand this. This list is based completely off of 14-star, best equips, best teams, everything maxed out, blah, 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 blah. So when we have a character like this that his role is to tank hits, that's literally all he's designed to do, is come in, take hits, and then heal it off, heal the damage off, fill up his unique gauge, and sort of provide the utility in the form of stunning green cards, mobilization green cards, and sniping with his blue card. He also has the lock and ultimate when the opponent has a defeated battle member. He's able to remove the enemy's vanish when they have one enemy battle member remaining. So he's kind of like a finishing character that starts off the fight as a very defensive style unit that has a lot of value in the area of being able to sort of shut down Super 17, which is pretty valuable still, I would say. And I don't really know how to judge the effect that Super 17 falling off of the boost system had, because we'll talk about that later on when we get to Super 17's spot on this list. But this character was basically essential to stop Super 17 back when this was really the only usable blue in the game besides like Goku and Bardock. We do have another blue character, which we'll talk about in a little bit here on the list, but GT Goku is no longer the only blue character that can take Super 17 down and just, stop him in his tracks. But again, Super 17 falling out of the boost system, I don't really mention that too often for characters that fall out of the boost system, but I actually feel like it's probably had a bigger impact on Super 17's damage than it has for a lot of other characters. I'm not exactly sure as to why that is, but maybe it has something to do with how the 10% extra damage, or whatever, the 10 or 15, whatever the extra boost, featured boost damage is for Super 17. I don't know, maybe it's how that works with like the Super Zenkai buff teams that he's on. Maybe it doesn't like multiply in or something. I don't know how it works, but it definitely has a pretty tangible effect that he fell off of the boost system. And I'm not sure if that means the value of this Goku goes up or it goes down, because you don't necessarily need to have this guy anymore to deal with Super 17. Or maybe it makes him even a stronger tool to counter Super 17 now, right? I guess you could look at it from both angles, but I would even still argue that even in just like a normal Saiyan team or a Sun family team, this guy could have a decent impact still. But we did also get Vegeta and Nappa, who can sort of fulfill the same role that this GT Spirit Bomb Goku used to do on like a Saiyan build. So I think he kind of, overall, if you're going to evaluate whether or not he's gained or lost value from the last list, he definitely has fallen down a few spots on this list. But I don't really think much has changed for this guy. He's still able to perform his role very well. But we have other characters now that can fill in the gaps for what this character used to be specialized in doing. So I'm going to put this guy at number 8. Let's move on to number 7. All right, so number 7, this is the first time we are doing a tier list or a top 10 list with Yamcha in the game. And I decided to go with him at number 7 on this list. I definitely could see this being a bit of a controversial spot for Yamcha, but I think based off of my experience using him, I've used him for God rank for the past 2 seasons since he's released, and I have had explosive results from using Yamcha. I felt like, so the God rank grind team that I used for this season was Golden Frieza, Yamcha, and Vegeta and Nappa. And I actually felt that there were a lot of matches that Yamcha just completely dominated by himself. And I think there's a lot of cases, like you could even argue that Yamcha outperformed Golden Frieza in a lot of those fights that I had. Not even just counting this season, but also last season as well. So Yamcha definitely is a very powerful character. I think this is probably a character where not a lot of people are going to have the same opinion as me, and the main reason why is just because they didn't summon for him. And honestly, it's more so than that too. It's that you don't really fight this character that often either. I don't think I've fought more than maybe 3 Yamchas ever in ranked PvP going for God rank. So people are not really going to have experience using him, but they're also not really going to have experience fighting against him. So I think it's going to be a bit tough for a lot of people to understand the value this guy brings. UC Super 17, I'd probably say Super 17 and Ultra Gohan are probably the 2 most common characters to encounter in upper ranked PvP. And you bring Yamcha, and Yamcha is like the ultimate counter to Super 17. Every single time the opponent switches into Super 17, if you save your switch into Yamcha to cover change against Super 17, they basically can't do anything. It's basically over. And then if you're able to touch them just one time with Yamcha, you kill them. Because you can lock Super 17 in. Even if let's say you start a combo on their Super 17 with a different character, and then you switch into Yamcha, normally what Super 17 would be able to do is go type neutral against Yamcha's type advantage damage against him. But Yamcha's main ability removes the type neutrality and locks him in, so a lot of times you can just switch into Yamcha, use your main ability, hit him with a strike, hit him with the ult, and just snipe him out and kill him. So I felt this guy to probably be the most effective counter against Super 17, which is what I was hinting to in the previous slot where I was talking about GT Goku, because prior to this guy's release, GT Goku was sort of the ultimate counter to Super 17, but now I would say Yamcha is very clearly a better counter to Super 17, and it was very clearly their intention to do that with this guy's release. They wanted to make sure that they put some kind of counter to Super 17 in the game. It was about 2.5 months since Super 17's release, and that's sort of where I feel is the correct time to release a direct counter to a character that has been sort of dominating the game for as long as he had been. Other things this guy does, he has obviously the lock-in ultimate. He actually nullifies endurance when the enemy is a full team alive. He has double card draw speed. He has extra damage. He can get cover null with the green card. Just a lot of things this guy's doing that are actually ridiculous. I think one thing that people don't realize is this guy actually can be a decent counter to Ultra Gohan in some instances. If the opponent has a full team alive and you have your Yamcha could lock in and rush and kill Ultra Gohan with a lock, endurance, nullification, rising rush. Like, it is pretty insane what this guy can do. And then, of course, later on in the fight, he becomes less valuable, but at that point, you could have him die, and he actually provides some insane death buffs. 35% damage is a lot. 35% damage death buffs to your team is a lot. Especially when you're pairing it with like a ton of Zenkai buffs for like Ultra Golden Frieza, which is what I did. It just becomes too much at that point, and there's like literally nothing the opponent can do. So Yamcha provides his value early on. He dies. He gives you tons of death buffs. He actually gives you Dragon Balls, and he heals your team as well. I actually can't stop speaking like enough about how good this character is, and I think maybe when he returns in a banner, which might not be for a while, people will start to see his value. Of course, there's a few areas where he's not the greatest, like he doesn't have many tags, which means you have to kind of put him in the leader slot for him to get his value. Not having a lot of tags means he doesn't really have access to the greatest equipment, doesn't really have access to the greatest Zenkai abilities. So there's a few detriments there for the character, but I would say overall, this character in the current environment is really, really good. And I think he's probably being heavily underrepresented by a lot of the players just because people didn't sub him for him, which I understand why they didn't. But number 7 is going to be Yamcha. Let's move on to number 6. Okay, number 6 is going to be LF Nappa, who revives into Vegeta, of course, from the Saiyan Saga. This is the most recent release that we've seen so far. Character came out about a week ago from me putting this video up, a little less than a week ago. But I think this character's pretty good. I don't really have many complaints about them. They're a pretty generic character. If you actually take a look at everything that they're doing, like they're not doing anything that's like, oh my god, Ultra Gohan is good, but he doesn't do this thing that Revival Nappa does. Like that's what makes Nappa so good. Like he's not doing anything super special. He's just a good character all around, both him and Vegeta. I think probably the thing that makes them as good as they are in my book is the fact that they're not really like half of a character and then another half of a character. And I think I remember talking about this when Goku and Bardock first dropped, because Goku and Bardock essentially are just a glorified Revival character. We don't really have a character right now in the game that can nullify the indestructible mechanic, so I kind of treated the indestructible mechanic as a pseudo-revive when Goku and Bardock dropped, and my argument for why Goku and Bardock were so good, well, one of the reasons why they were so good back when they dropped is because typically with Revival characters, we see that they kind of hold back with either the pre-Revival form or the post-Revival form, and they're kind of not ever like one complete character. Maybe it's like really easy to kill the pre-revival form, or maybe the pre-revival form doesn't really do a lot of damage, or whatever the case is. But for Vegeta and Nappa, I really do feel like Nappa is a complete character by himself. And I think Vegeta, of course, is a complete character by himself. So there are certain areas, obviously, where I think they could have done a bit more for the character. But I think in terms of everything that they offer, they have a lot of tags, they have really good equipment, they have really good Zenkai abilities, or Zenkai buffs that they can receive. I think on top of the fact that they're a revival character, they have pretty good kit. I think the fact that Nappa has as many blue cards as he does, with them being ranged, which is very, very rare in this day and age to have a character that can force draw so many ranged blue cards like he does, with how strong they are as well. He has a bunch of stop time green cards he could draw. He has the gauge, which gives him another blue card. So I think a lot of the things that Nappa's doing are really good. And of course, Vegeta, I think his ability to go type neutral with the green is really effective against like Super Baby 2 or Ultra UI Goku. I think Vegeta having the bit of extra survivability when he falls below half, he could heal up a little bit. And Vegeta does a lot of damage too. I mean, Vegeta definitely does a lot of damage. I think Nappa's blue card hits really hard, but besides Nappa's blue card, Nappa himself isn't really doing a ton of damage. But I think in terms of the teams that you're going to be running Nappa on anyway, for this character, most of the time what it's going to come down to, I think, is they're like a really, really good second or third character to just put on the team to round it out. I don't really think this character in most cases is going to be like your ace character. They're not going to be your Ultra Golden Frieza. They're not going to be your Super 17. They're not going to be your Ultra Gohan character. They're going to be the character that you run alongside your ace character to sort of have like a backup damage dealing character that has multiple lives to play with. So I think that's probably what's going to be their role moving forward. When we head into the 6th anniversary, I could definitely see a case where, like, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but let's just say we get like a, I don't know, an LF Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta or something. I don't know. So LF Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta drops for the 6th anniversary. He's like the best character in the game. This is probably one of the first characters you go to put him on the same team as that unit, because they're a really, really good just secondary option for the team. So I think that's a pretty good spot for them. And I think in terms of where I'd put them on the list, I mean, I have them at number 6, and I feel pretty comfortable with them being at number 6. I think if you wanted to move them up a slot, I wouldn't have an issue with that. They could be number 5. I think you could move them down to number 7, somewhere in there. I think is fine for this character, but I would say it's a pretty good release. They're not too broken. They're not too underpowered either. I think they're actually probably perfectly balanced. So really good job by the Legends team for this Nappa Vegeta character. Number 6 on the list. Let's move on to number 5. All right, so number 5 is going to be Super Baby 2. I think this is probably going to be another bit of a controversial place on this list. I will reiterate, this list is for 14-star characters, best setups, best equipment, etc., etc., etc. I think this character at 14 stars, I probably would say it's not going to get much better than this, unless we get like Anniversary Part 1 is like a blue unit. If we get 6th Anniversary Part 1 and there's like a monster blue character that drops, I maybe could see this character even moving higher up on this list. But as it stands right now, the only real threat in the game for this character is Super 17. And obviously Super 17 is a very, very monstrous character still. I don't really think he has completely fallen off. Like, oh my God, Super 17, he was, he was good for a few months, but now he's completely swept under the rug. I don't think that's the case at all. But again, I'll reiterate what I said earlier in this video. I do think that the featured boost no longer being applicable to Super 17 actually did have a bit of a bigger effect than I thought it would. It is very, very noticeable in how much damage he's doing. And I think that really does help this character, because really when this character dropped, the gigantic barrier to entry for this unit was getting past the wall, which was basically running into Super 17 every single match. Which obviously it's still not good to run into Super 17 with this character, but I think, even if you get caught with Super 17 on this character, this guy will still be able to live those first initial few hits, and then you'll get his gauge active, you'll destroy the Super 17's hand, you will have all the different buffs, you'll reduce his ki, you'll remove his vanish, at which point you could probably counterattack and do a pretty good job with that. So I think Super Baby 2 is positioned to be really, really good here, obviously with the addition of Nappa and Vegeta, who I haven't really seen them be like super mega common, just because I think people don't really care to summon for a Nappa character, probably is why. But I think with them being in the game, plus with Golden Frieza being very, very common, I definitely like this character's position right now. I think he's really good against Ultra Gohan as well, with the lock and snipe with the ultimate with the full gauge active. UI Goku potentially could be an issue for this guy, but even still, if you get caught with UI Goku, you can just let your gauge fill up and then you pretty much stop the combo for free with this guy. So I think there's a lot of value with this character right now. Typically what happens with these counter gauges though, well, not counter gauges, but like defensive style gauges with like Ultra Broly had a similar type of gauge as this guy. Typically what happens is they don't really age the greatest, because like I assume this is probably going to happen when we get to the anniversary, but we'll see. Whenever we get power crept offensively, Like, let's say again we get like a monstrously good offensive character for Anniversary, which probably is going to happen. It's going to be harder to get the maximum amount of value off of the gauge for this guy, because if this guy is going to get comboed by a super mega offensive character, you know, you're not going to feel as comfortable sitting in and just taking the hits with this guy, because he's probably just going to end up dying is what's going to happen. So we'll see what this guy's fate is going to be as we head into the Anniversary, but I think he's actually in a very, very good spot right now. And not a lot of people using him, but I definitely ran into like 4 or 5 people that were using this guy during the God rank grind this season, which is definitely higher than it was in the prior ranks or the prior season. So I think, you know, right now stocks are pretty high for Super Baby 2. I think he's in a pretty good spot, and I feel pretty comfortable with him being at number 5. So let's move on to the top 4. I have a few things to say about the top 4, so let's get into it. Okay, so for the top 4 spots on this list, I think it makes the most sense to just group them all together, and then we can sort of go through each character a little bit individually. But I think just when you reach the top 4 of the game right now, we have Gohan, UI Goku, Super 17, and Frieza. It really does feel like there's a pretty significant cutoff once you get to number 4. And so like from Gohan down to number 5 on the list, like I feel like there is a pretty big jump. Because these are basically the 4 characters that run the entire game right now, and every single team you encounter is probably going to end up including at least one of these 4 units, if not multiple, if not all 3, or if not like the main 3 you're running are all 4, or some mixture of these 4 units together. So this is in order. I have Ultra Gohan at 4, I have Ultra UI Goku at 3, I have Super 17 at 2, and then I have Ultra Golden Frieza at number 1. For Ultra Gold, I'll just start with Ultra Golden Frieza at number 1 because I think it's the most obvious listing here. I don't really think there's an argument for any other character to be in number 1 besides Ultra Golden Frieza. Talked about this in the last list, and I got a lot of blowback on the last list for having Frieza above Super 17, and I just don't see it. I don't see any universe in where Super 17 is more effective, more valuable, better than Golden Frieza. Golden Frieza is doing way too much. His damage is way too high. The comeback is way too broken. There's just too many things he's doing, and there's too many cheap things he's doing that allows Super 17, I think, to even touch where Frieza is. And I think the same thing could be said for UI Goku and Ultra Gohan. So I think you could probably make the argument that there's even another jump going from 4-3-2 to 1. I think Frieza is very comfortably number 1. I don't really think there's not really much competition there. Even if like UI, like people make their like what if UI Goku catches him and nullifies his cover change? Well, then UI Goku loses all of his health. Congratulations. Like the combination of different mechanics that they gave to Golden Frieza is just insane. So okay, so that's number 1 out of the way. Don't really need to talk about Golden Frieza for the rest of this video, basically. But for Gohan, so the main way that I structured these top 4 rankings here is basically just based off of matchup. Again, these are not rankings that are individually based. Me doing this ranking is not me saying Ultra UI is a better unit than Ultra Gohan. Super 17 is a better unit than Ultra Gohan. I'm saying that right now, I think Gohan has a bit of a smaller impact on the game than UI does, and then I think UI has a bit of a smaller impact on the game than Super 17 does. And then the same thing about Frieza. I think Frieza is just a different level at this point. So for Gohan, I would say that Gohan probably has the worst matchups out of any of these top 4 units, which is why I decided to put him at number 4. Gohan is ridiculous. And you guys have heard me ranting about Gohan in a lot of my showcases. He's actually probably one of my most hated characters to fight ever because of how many tools he has. We're getting to the point now where we are getting characters where there's literally no correct play to make against them because they have counters to everything that you could possibly do. For Gohan, you could very easily make the argument that Gohan has probably just the best kit in the game out of any character. But right now, in terms of matchups, he's not in a great spot, and I think they probably did that intentionally because of how insane that they made Gohan. So Gohan, I would say, is a pretty unfavorable matchup, of course, versus Golden Frieza, and then we have Vegeta and Nappa in the game now too, who actually provide a bit of a less favorable matchup against like other Saiyan teams or Frieza Force teams. Like they're a pretty powerful unit. Like Nappa catches this Gohan with a blue card, he's like dead almost. So that's a bit of a, unfavorable position for him. And then we have UI Goku, and I don't really see a lot of people talking about how UI Goku can just straight up shut down this Gohan, right? Gohan gets caught by UI Goku once, and if you're on like a decent setup with UI Goku where he's getting his Zenkai buff, he's getting his full Ultra ability, like UI Goku can pretty much shut down this Gohan with like a few blast cards, and then like his main ability to draw the extra green into the blast. Like, it's tough. Like, Gohan can get caught for sure, even though he has a lot of get out of jail free cards. So I think just when you look at these four characters, Gohan at this point probably has the more unfavorable matchups in the game. Frieza obviously has a lot to do with that. Vegeta, Nappa now. UI Goku's pretty good against Gohan. So Gohan is great individually, but we'll see what happens as we move into the anniversary. If we continue to get like a bunch of Sun Family characters, which pretty highly likely we do at some point in the anniversary, get some Sun Family units, I can definitely see Gohan moving up on this list for sure. Next, we have UI Goku. Obviously, UI Goku can become a piece of meat to Super 17. He can fall prey to Super 17's blast cards, but if you are somebody who knows what you're doing with UI's gauge, he can definitely overcome that. And I think UI Goku, just, you guys know what I think about UI Goku. I actually am not a big fan of UI Goku, so I've never have been a fan of the dodging gauge, especially when you compare this guy's dodging gauge mechanics to the other UI Gokus, because this guy actually reduces sub count by for your team when he dodges, which is insane. You combo that with like Ultra Gohan or like another UI Goku, for example, and it becomes really, really hard to deal with. And then obviously we have the lock-in, we have the anti-endurance as well. He's a really slippery unit. He's really hard to catch. And I think Red, besides Super 17, I mean, you look at this list, the only other Red character on the list is at number 10, which is Beast. I don't really think Beast poses much of a threat to this guy, just because it's really hard to hit him as Beast if you know what you're doing with UI Goku. But Super 17, again, remember, UI Goku goes type neutral for the first few counts upon switch-in. So even against like a Super 17, he can still eat a few hits before he starts to take real damage. But yeah, I think UI Goku's in a really good spot. Of course, Vegeta and Nappa being purple definitely help this guy a little bit in terms of giving him a bit of extra value. In terms of if you want to actually waste your lock-in ultimate to kill Vegeta and Nappa's first life, it's up to you. I think it's probably a fair trade-off just to get rid of that first life to, sort of prepare the Rising Rush for later on in the fight. He's a pretty good character to use against Golden Frieza, if nothing more than he just being able to tank against Frieza's ridiculously long combos. But I think UI Goku's in a really good position right now, and I feel comfortable with him at number 3. And then last, we'll talk about Super 17. Again, I've mentioned this throughout this video, but I think Super 17 falling off the featured boost actually did have a bit of a more of an impact than I thought it would, but I still think it's probably worth putting him at the second spot on this list. Again, I will go back to the matchups discussion that I had earlier. Not a ton of blue characters. I think if Yamcha... Here's what I'll say. If Yamcha was more of a common character to fight against, I probably would have this guy lower than UI Goku on the list. And I don't think that's crazy to do, right? In fact, even right now, if you wanted to put Super 17 lower than UI Goku or lower than Gohan, I'm okay with that. I think spots 2 through 4 on this list could certainly be switched up into any order you want. But the way I did it, again, was just because of matchups. I think there not being enough dominant blue units right now is one of the main reasons why I have Super 17, even post falling off of boost, at number 2 on the list. And also just the frequency at which you fight blue characters. Basically, when you're queuing up into the game right now, you're fighting green, red, purple. You're not really fighting that many blue units. Not many people using blue characters right now. So, again, if Yamcha was more common to run into, I probably would have Super 17 lower on this list because he gets hard countered by Yamcha. Yamcha is like the Super 17 slayer. It really is the way it is. But I like to, again, these lists are based off of my own experience playing the game, and I really do not see most players running Yamcha right now. So even though I use Yamcha, and I really had no issues at all with Super 17 whatsoever the past 2 seasons, because I used Yamcha the past 2 seasons, completely didn't care about Super 17 whatsoever, I still recognize that he definitely can carry the games for sure. So that's going to round out the list here, the top 4 on the screen. So just to quickly go through what I had, starting from number 10, we had Beast Gohan at number 10, the Transforming Red Beast Gohan. Number 9, we have Tag Goku and Bardock. Number 8, we have the LF GT Spirit Bomb Goku. Number 7, we have Blue Yamcha. Number 6, we have Nappa and Vegeta. Number 5, we have LF Super Baby 2. Number 4, we have Ultra Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Number 3, we have Ultra UI Sign Goku. Number 2, we have LF Super 17. And then number 1, we have Ultra Golden Frieza. Let me know down below what you guys think of these rankings. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you agree with? And what do you disagree with? Let me know your thoughts down below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.